need to come back and take pictures of that. There's like a freaking old mill. It's like all like fuck. What? Seriously? Oh my god, this is unreal.
What? You got here just in time.
That's unbelievable. You're inside
What?
a
Rain?
distillery while there's like thunder and rain outside. It just feels so like it's just an amazing. Before I even touched one of these, it's just like such a great like experience.
We just talked about it, and then I looked at a couple of YouTube videos myself, and I'm like, no, I'm not watching. I don't really know anything. I want to come in fresh.
Yeah.
I seen the pictures, and then I had told you. We saw the abandoned building.
Is that derelict? Like on the right hand side as we're coming?
Yeah.
Wait.
You came from Buffalo Trace, you probably think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And we passed like looked like an old mill or something like that. But is that part of this? Or,
Mill? No, those were aging warehouses.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, those were built in 1800s. So. They haven't had a proper roof on them for blue corn.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a brand new rescue for us here. This one, we're finished processing for today, I think. So this one will probably process tomorrow. So we've got red, white, and blue corn that we're doing right now. So if you look at this one over here,
Yeah, it's fermented. Yeah, it's fermented.
Yeah, it's still fermenting. This one's fermenting already too. So we haven't pitched any yeast in these yet, but this is spontaneously fermenting. So you can see a little better over there. That's the white corn version. So it's a spin-off of the OCD, the white corn instead. Yeah, it smells really good.
Smells unbelievable.
Yeah. Got fermented all over the place. So this is the white corn. Put your hand down close to that and feel that heat coming off of that.
Don't touch that.
So that's all the activity of the yeast making that heat hot like that. And so when the fermentation is at a peak, you get this cap on the surface. Okay. When the fermentation is nearly completed, that cap will settle. All that grain will sink to the bottom. So that's the white corn. This one's also at a pretty peak level of fermentation. And then over here we've
Just
got
a natural process. It's yeast eating the sugar.
So once the fermentation starts to go down, the food is almost gone, and the yeast slows down. And so this one's near the completion of fermentation. So to me, fermentation is like a hill, right? You start at the bottom, like this goes over there by the cooker, and you add the yeast, and then it peaks like those where you have the thick cap, and then you start to go on the downhill, and that grain will sink down, and it'll become more liquid at the top, and then the bubbling will pretty much all stop. And that's how you know that the fermentation's finished. So this one again is the we call it Royal Crow. It's blue corn, even though it looks purplish. Mm-hmm. Why people don't want to use direct heat? So we have to separate the grain. Now in Scotland they do this as well. In Scotland they typically separate the grain before fermentation. Okay. And same thing with beer. pull the grains out. So this machine is called a screw press, and so basically you pump the mash into it, and it squeezes the heck out of it. And what comes out is not quite dry, but close, right? So this is the spent grains that we'll give to a farmer to give to his cows. And so that step is the extra step that we have to do. Most distilleries that use steam heat can distill on the grain, so with the grains in the still, because they don't have to worry about it burning. But if you look at our stills,
Yeah.
you see the flame, right? And so that's the part. We've got two different things running right now. I'm gonna let you try two different things and see how they're different still.
Coming in. Okay. Oh, wait till you smell this.
What do you smell?
I'll take your eyebrows off.
Whoa.
Okay, hang on. Citrusy. I got a citrus note. I don't know if it's...
This is the blue corn. What we're distilling right now.
It's warm.
It is a little warm now. The cooling water.
So it's coming out, it's still hot. Condensed and then...
That's 65%. Not all. Drop it too.
Nice though. Easy, like... It's easy to drink.
Now this is the one we call patriotic. It's 100% corn, but it's a red, white, and blue corn. So there's no barley or wheat or rye in this one.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
If I could pinpoint that, I would say it.
Well, you know, I think for me, it's like when those you sampled up front. I can tell you there's a difference. I can tell you which one I prefer, but I can't describe it. You know, how do you put words on something that you've never experienced before?
Sometimes I do a colour, just say a colour. It reminds me of like an object, a shape, or sharp, like pointed, curved, or rounded. This, I get it wrong of this.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Or call.
Just a little bit higher, almost 70.
Yeah, I remember I was in Miami and we went to a taco place called Taquiza and we had like blue corn tortillas. It's like this and that.
But so would I be correct in saying this? Would I be correct in saying I always have the opinion that see this high pitch and that see this high low. To me that's a quality. It's a quality of craft. Whereas you can have 40% 80 proof and it's horrendous. And it comes out nothing that's high proof. When you have lower proof, then it's not enjoyable.
Right.
And it feels cheap.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like when the spirit like okay, that's actually 40 proof or whatever. Yes.
That tastes great.
There's no
They have.
oh my god.
Yeah.
not
That
aggressive.
surprises people. So I'll explain it over here with this still. So our stills, while they're different sizes and shapes, they're basically set up the same way. Okay. This is a still. These two look like beer kegs. Those are what's called doubler. Okay. So basically, what happens is the vapor is coming up here in this pipe. Get my flashlight out now, it's very small. So it comes up through this pipe, comes over here and goes down into the double. That pipe goes all the way to the bottom, so it's underneath liquid inside there. So the vapor that gets into that tank recondenses back to liquid. So that's distillation 1. Then it eventually heats up in here and goes back up this pipe, up and over and down in here and does the same thing. That's distillation. Sorry, this is distillation 1, that's distillation 2, that's distillation 3. And what you see here, this doesn't serve any purpose other than it looks cool, is you have vapors that are trying to climb up the pipe and they're condensing, they're falling back down.
Got you.
And they're
The pressure's coming out.
the vapors
Yeah.
are pushing up, right?
So it's fighting
So that
itself.
liquid can't find its way back
Yeah.
down into the tank because there's something always trying to go the other way. So the whole point of making these pipes as tall as possible is that it gets slightly cooler up there than it is down here, and it's slightly cooler up there than it is down there, right? And so that temperature differential means some things are condensing and falling backwards, whereas some things are staying a vapor and going forward, right? So this final run, and then it goes in here, the condensing coil's inside, right? Then it comes out, and there's your spirit. So you'll see it's not very fast. You can't make massive quantities with hot spirit.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one's running the same mash bill as that one, and it's, let me see your cup. So this is the same,
Same.
but that was different. So that's
Yep.
a different mash bill. We're finishing up that recipe over there. Okay. So this will probably taste a little different even than what you had over there, even though it's the same exact mash.
Yeah. Similar nose. Similar kind of like.
Similar. And part of the reason for the difference is how each still refluxes, this action of the liquid condensing and falling backwards versus going forwards. Wow.
Who built this? Who put this together? You did all this?
John built this one, I built the other ones.
And how did you learn that? Was it through trial and error? Was
Yeah.
it?
In my garage, I can tell you that story up there.
It's quite but what I love about it is it's ingenious. It's
So I said
engineering.
we're
But it's
the most
primitive as well.
unusual-
It's
We're the most unusual distillery because there's not many distilleries that build their own stills, number one. Certainly not configured like this because we buy used tanks. This tank came from a soy sauce factory in Wisconsin. This tank came from the Jim Beam factory up in Cincinnati. That still over there was from a beer brewery. So I find used stainless tanks and then we turn them into
make them what
stills.
you want to make them in. Yeah.
But the basic idea of what we're doing here was developed in my garage when I had my first still, and I tweaked it, kept modifying it and changing it, trying to get, and achieve exactly what you just said. How do you get a high proof spirit that doesn't burn, that doesn't cause you to want to, get rid of it real quick? It doesn't have that harshness to it. And the answer, as far as I'm concerned, is triple distillation. Each time that you distill it, it's called cleaning it up, right? You're cleaning up the spirit. And the objective ultimately is to keep the things you want, which is flavor, and get rid of the things you don't, which cause that harsh sensation that you're talking about. Okay. So yeah, I tweaked my first distill probably around 20 times, just modifications to it and so forth.
And are you the mindset that because in Scotch and in Irish whiskey and that, every bump, every little kind of dent in the metal in the still, that because that's what they did. Jameson had that. They've got a giant one, and they copied it. and it's like that. It's because of this bump in the still that it creates a unique profile. And
They make those claims, but that's more superstition now. Rumsfeld was originally going to distill rum, and did, and it was going to be called Rum Still, and then he had to change its name because we make bourbon in it too.
Yeah.
Dr. Crow, named after James Crow.
No, James Crow.
The one who founded the Old Crow Bourbon brand.
Okay.
And then Double D was originally called it the Big Deuce because it has two doublets on it, which that's the second still ever built. And it's been upgraded 3 hopefully.
Slowly's gonna like. So this is a room that's like 1,300 people, and then you have a room next to it that's 1,000 people, a room upstairs, 500 people, and a room outside that holds 4,000.
Really?
So the people that own that building are just figures all over the
That's
place.
cool.
Yeah. Let's go. It's actually I thought we were going to get sunshine. Nah, it's like we together.
Yesterday was nice.
Yeah, I think it's going to be nice on Friday.
Clothes,
yeah,
except for like a business suit or something. He may have even gotten a bunch of those at the thrift store. But he worked in New York City, Manhattan, as a sound engineer. So made a pretty good living and didn't spend money a lot. And
yeah.
so I guess
Treated
that
it
might have
to
been
that-
an
to that.
extravagant. I don't know what they would have cost in 1958, but
Still wouldn't have been cheap.
yeah.
Well, cheers, David. Thank you
All right.
for a wonderful experience so far.
Cheers. Yeah, thank you for bringing this, sharing it here with us. So, the question, that's a common question, what made me want to do this? And I have to go back a little bit to kind of put the preface on it because I never drank much when I was younger. Okay, when I started distilling, I probably tasted 5 bourbons in my entire life.
Okay.
And I didn't even know that rye whiskey was a type of whiskey. I had never had rum that wasn't in a mixed drink. I just wasn't much on drinking. So that's the background piece, which kind of adds to the whole question of now why in the heck did you do this? But in 2009, one of my colleagues asked if I would build him a still. And I thought that was rather unusual because I didn't know anything about a still. Zero knowledge, okay? I have lived in Kentucky since 1980. I only had gone to one distillery, and that was because our company had a meeting in their meeting room, okay? So my knowledge of the industry, my knowledge of spirits in general was very, very limited, very, very limited. So he reasoned that I knew how to weld, so I should be able to he had an old beer keg, and he wanted me to convert it into a still. I don't know anything about a still. So he showed me some information. You look at a simple pot still, and I go, oh, okay, that's a pretty simple device. I can do that. So I built it, gave it to him, and forgot all about it. For some reason, it didn't intrigue me at the time. He was going to make sugar shine, which dissolve sugar in water, blah, blah, blah. That didn't seem very interesting. So a few years later, I was at his house, and I noticed that the still was sitting in his garage, and he had never used it. He was going to buy the top part, the column part, and he didn't. And so I suggested that he give it back to me, and I thought, well, maybe I'll figure out how to use it. And in my background is in industry. I worked in industry for a long time, so process engineer type of function, working with manufacturers to help improve process to figure out, and so making things is kind of what I do. And so I didn't know what bourbon was. I had to look it up, the criteria, more than 51% corn and all those things. And so I thought, well, I'm in Kentucky, maybe I should try bourbon. That sounds... And, I have a way of looking at things to say, okay, people did distilling for 2,000 years with pretty simple, basic equipment. It can be a basic, simple process. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It doesn't have to be like these big major distilleries that have a lot of things going on that are complicated. You don't have to be a chemist to do it. Chemistry and science, the microscope wasn't even invented until the 1670s, and then it wasn't until Pasteur in the 1800s who really understood what yeast was doing during fermentation. So I reasoned that you don't really need to know science either to do it, because for the better part of 2,000 years, people didn't have the science, okay? So all of that to me was simply saying it doesn't have to be that difficult, okay? So I approached it to say, just keep it simple, keep it basic. There's a lot of information out there, Facebook, YouTube, and whatever, that I learned over time that everyone says, oh, here's how you have to do it. And I've learned that whenever all the experts say this is the way it is, it's not. And when they say you shouldn't do this, you can. Mm-hmm. And so some of those things, for example, is, you don't want to use wild yeast. You don't want to use wild yeast. You get off flavors and blah, 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 and it's unpredictable and so on. And I thought, well, hell, people have been fermenting stuff with wild yeast for 10,000 years. Well, yeast has been working on this planet probably for billions of years, figuring it can ferment anything. It can ferment in all kinds of conditions. It can ferment everywhere on the planet if there's something that will ferment. There's only a couple places where things won't grow, like Antarctica, mm-hmm. where there's no fermentation, but there's still yeast spores floating around in the air down there. They just don't have anything to eat. So with all that in mind, I thought, just take the simple approach and keep it simple, and keep it basic. And you saw our process, you see our equipment down there. It's there's not any bells and whistles on there. We put a few things on there because you don't have to stand there and monitor the stills. The 3 stills are running down there right now, and you don't have to monitor it. So anyway, I set out to distilling at home in my garage, and started slowly and worked my way up, learning. You mentioned trial and error earlier, and I don't like to say error, because when you're learning something or teaching yourself to do something, which is what I was doing, everything's not going to work. That doesn't make it an error. That just is a lesson. Mm-hmm. Okay, you try this, you find out, okay, and that's what I try to tell people about the spirits. I said, I've learned that there's as many ways to think about distilling as there are people who are distilling. And everybody has their own sort of belief about the best way. And if you ask any other distiller, they're going to say, oh, well, what we do is the best way. And I say, there's no best way. There's lots of different ways. What you have to ask is, here's what I said, here's what we do. Here's why we do it that way. Here's the result we get. If that works, then do that. If your result, people don't want to buy it, you better change something. Okay? If you get a wonderful end result like this, keep doing that. Keep doing what you do. So I don't tell anybody that what we do is the best. I tell them this is kind of what I learned from my own process of going through it in my garage, tinkering with the still. I don't have any background in still manufacturing. I just tried different things, different ways to achieve the outcome, and learn from those things. And most of them turned out. There weren't too many failures along the way, really. With direct heat, you have to be careful you don't burn it in the still. I did do that a couple times accidentally, and it's like, okay, figure out a way to not
Yep.
let that happen. And so anyway, I was just having fun. For me, it was like my other hobbies in the past of making something. I did pottery, I did glass blowing, I did woodworking, metalworking. I was a welder. And so it's just another version of making something. And, you know, nature does the hard work. There's Vicky is adding yeast to yesterday's cook. So what she did is she went to the one from the day before and she's just transferring some from that one over to that one. We don't use packaged yeast. We just move from one batch to the next to the next. And we've been doing that for about 8 years. And so anyway, those are things I did in my garage. I tried all different kinds of yeast. I tried beer yeast, and champagne yeast, and wine yeast, and distiller's yeast, and Fleshman's baking yeast. They all worked fine. The pot still is a huge variable anyway, so I don't know that you're going to be able to detect, say, oh, our specific yeast definitely gives me some specific flavor at the end. Well, you put it through a pot still versus a continuous still or a coffee still, it's different. So I tried all those things. In Kentucky they say it's the limestone water. I'm thinking they make pretty good whiskey in Scotland, and it's not the limestone water. In fact, it's going to be quite different. So I tried city water. I tried distilled water. I tried store-bought spring water. I tried our spring water from the spring that's on the property here later. And, if people said you had to do it this way, I wouldn't do it that way to see what would happen. If people said you shouldn't do this, like use wild yeast, then that's precisely what I would do. Just to see for myself, to see, is that really true? And, you hear those legend stories of, in Scotland, if the still wears out and it had a dent in it, then they want to get, a reproduction. And now they put the laser down inside and they laser and
make it exact.
And whatever. And if it still is different size and shape, just like I showed you with American Rumsfeld back there, yes, you're going to get a different result. Okay? But the nature of pot still is highly variable anyway. Okay? How much tails did you put back in? And where do you take the cuts? And all those different things. And so anyway, I was experimenting with all those things. And I had hundreds of experiments. It's a working distillery. So you're going to hear noises. People enjoy that when they come here. I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't trying to make a business out of it. In fact, during those years, it never occurred to me to have a distillery. I was just doing it for fun. There's something gratifying about taking these basic ingredients and going through the cooking process and using the enzymes to break it down to starches into fermentable sugars, and then letting the yeast do its thing, and then you put it in your still and something comes out the end and it tastes good. I mean, there's just something gratifying about that. So I was enjoying it and sharing with my friends just to kind of get their feedback. And one day one of them says, "Hey, I know a cool old distillery's for sale." And cool and old, okay. So you go online, look up Old Crow, learn about the history of the brand, learn about the history of the place, the significance in the industry of James Crow, and I was intrigued. So I drove out here. I'd never been out here, and when I pulled up to that, something in my brain said, "Yeah, you should start a distillery there," because as one visitor said one day, there's a big sign across the front that says "Success not guaranteed," right? And I knew. I mean, I had enough understanding. Like I said, my previous work, I did a lot of things with corporations all around the world and helping with business planning, preparation, and that sort of thing. And so, I put together a business plan. I enlisted the help of another distiller to help me with the financial part, because I didn't really understand financially, what's what's realistic and not, and those sort of things, to put together the financial plan. And proceeded to go to banks and try to get a loan to buy the property. And it's funny, bankers are funny. You go in there and you tell them, okay, so what I want to do is I want to start a distillery. Here's my business plan. Here's the market research. Here's all that stuff that goes in a business plan. And then they ask questions. So, have you worked for another distillery before? No, I haven't. Where'd you learn to distill? In my garage. It wasn't in the family? No. You have any experience in the industry at all? No. And then somebody will be with you in a minute. And then they start looking at your financials, and when are you going to make a profit? Well, it has to age, so it's going to be. Oh, and that's when they suddenly start to say, that's really not what we do. And you go, okay, and then you go to the next one, and you go through the same thing, over and over again, and maybe it is audacious to say, I want to take on this dilapidated place and start a business that I have no actual experience in, and I'm taught myself how to do it in my garage, and and so I got turned down a lot. I think about 12 times before I finally got a bank to agree, and I'm not sure in the end why they actually agreed, but they did. And then, in terms of planning, what I tell people is that a plan is always going to be wrong. So the question is how wrong and in which direction. So if you're planning your finances, you overestimate your expenses and you underestimate your revenue, and think worst case scenario, best case scenario, that kind of thing. You can go work through all that. But you're going to be wrong, okay? It's just like planning our production right now. How much of this should I distill anticipating sales 4 years from now? No clue, right? So you just have to do something. So, I've owned property before. It's pretty straightforward. You need insurance, you call the insurance guy and you say, hey, I just bought this house. I need you to come and get me a policy for it, and so on. So I call an insurance guy and I say, I just bought this property. I need you to come and so then they look at this and, well, how in the world am I supposed to insure that? It's already dilapidated. Or how am I supposed to insure these other buildings? I said, well, you don't need to insure those other buildings because the bank only cares about this one. And this is all I need. Okay? And then, you got insurance and these other things that you realize, oh, okay, yeah, that's a little bit out of the ordinary, that insurance people don't know how to deal with that scenario. Bankers don't know how to deal with that scenario. And so those were the challenges, some of the challenges. And even in Kentucky, where obviously distilling is a big deal, the local officials really don't understand the hazard of it, because alcohol burns. It's, oh my God, it's going to be like gasoline. And no, it's not at all. And you could blow up, or you could go blind, or all these other myths. And no, that none of that's true. It's all myth. And so, I don't know. I when I reached a little bit older than you, it's about 45, and I explained to people, I said, look, by the time you get to that age, so you're ready to start this, you better be able to look back and ask yourself, what am I good at? You've always known what you're not good at because you've always struggled with those things, right? So I know what I'm not good at. Things like math and things like chemistry, right? Those subjects were always hard for me. But what I'm good at is making things, all right? And for a long time here, it was just John and myself, and every so often we'd have a part-time person helping. But it's, a few guys. At first, it was just guys, and Vicky came along a couple of years ago, that have no formal training. That was the other thing. Did you go to a school to learn how to distill? No, I taught myself in my garage, and I think that because I taught myself in my garage, I think we discovered some things that others aren't going to discover. You go to school and you learn how to do it the way they tell you how to do it. That's the way you do it, and that doesn't lead to creativity necessarily. Okay, we had some happy discoveries. You tried the OCD Premium. That was a happy discovery because we were trying to solve the problem of how are we going to get it out of the barrel through filters and into the bottle, and we came up with a different method, and that led to the premium version. When I was in my garage, I didn't have filters. I didn't have a filtration system. So I used coffee filters because that was what I had. And we still do that out here for some of the products. Just run through a coffee filter, which allows more char to go through because it's a bigger opening than our regular filtration system. And that was a happy accident. And, we've learned things from customers who I was cleaning up the bottling line one day, and there's some leftovers there, and I'm not going to throw it away. I figured I'd drink it myself, and I'm just pouring it through a coffee filter to knock some of the char out. And the customer says, "What are you doing?" And I explained it. He said, "Well, how do I get some of that?" He wants to buy that, and I said, "We work hard. We put it through a filtration system to eliminate the char, and now what you're telling me is you actually want the char." And he says, "Yeah." And I thought, well, and so I started asking people, and they were like, "Yeah, that's great. The mouthfeel changed." Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I thought, here you do this because you think it's the right thing to do, and then exactly the opposite. So we do some products that way too, and there were just things that we discovered. And somebody asked me once if I'd ever considered having a consultant, come in and help, and I said no, which is really odd because I was a consultant for 25 years, but I wasn't a typical one. I wasn't the one who comes in and tells you what you already know and then sends you a bill for it. I would go in and teach people how to think about their process so that they could solve their own problems. So the same thing here. If I had a consultant come in, he'd tell us what to do, tell us what we're doing wrong. He'd tell us to do it just like everybody else does it, and then you're just like everybody else. And you sure can't survive in the middle of bourbon country in Kentucky being just like I can't compete against the Jim Beams and the Heaven Hills and so forth. No way. We have to be unique. And so what people get when they come here is they get to sit with me or John or even Vicky, who's quite knowledgeable. She's learned a lot. She can run the stills. That anybody that you sit down and talk to knows how to operate the stills, can explain the process. Everybody does all the steps here, from the cooking and fermenting all the way through. So that's what sets us apart, I think, from other places. You have to have something unique. You bring this and you tell me how that goes there, and the other ones that you brought too. And I can picture that they have the same challenge. How do you compete against 300 other distilleries in Scotland, right? Who are all making great products. So, that was it. It was this cool little place, and so you can see some of the photos of the distillery out in the lobby. We have a photo book too. I mean, it's just a fantastic old building. The equipment that's still here is just 1935 boilers, right after Prohibition. And so something about that whole thing just flipped a switch in my head and thought, and I didn't have this vision in my mind. This has been an evolution. These things came about sometimes accidentally. This one, corn only bourbon, 100% corn. I forgot to order rye. We ran out. And all of our bourbons at that time had rye as a second grain in them. And so John says, what if we just use 100% corn? I thought, okay, let's give that a try. This stuff that you saw here with the heirloom corns, that's one of the guys who helps out on weekends. He said, hey, have you ever thought about this? Can we try this? Okay, let's try that. John also asked if we'd ever tried a bourbon with oats. I said, we can try it. So that's the advantage of being small, is that you can try various things, and sometimes those are a result of a mistake, an error, whatever. So I just think it's puzzling or amusing or whatever the word is that a few people with no actual formal training who build their own stills out of surplus materials produce products that are, declared by some pretty authoritarian figures as their, micro-distillery bourbon of the year. But really the most gratifying part is customers, customers who come back multiple times, who really go out of their way to come back and get our products because they enjoy them. Yeah.
No, fantastic. Like, it must be the satisfaction of being able to turn your head and look at that and be like, that was you. You did that. You, out of an idea, out of a...
Yeah, well, it's been it's always been a joint effort. I think, like I said, a lot of the ideas that are here were not mine, and that's great.
I mean, there's a collective of a...
Yeah, that's one of those more difficult things for me. I've accomplished other things in life, co-authored a couple of successful business books, and had a successful career as a consultant, and traveled the world. I don't know how to say it. I'm not the salesman guy who's going to sit here and tell you, oh my God, OCD is the most amazing bourbon ever in the whole wide world. I think it's really good. I think I would be delighted to put the OCD Premium up against any bourbon in the world. And I'm not saying it's going to come out on top of any bourbon in the world, but I'm going to say it's going to hold its own, which says a lot given that it was about 6 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. I think our products are unique. We talked about that, using direct heat. That's a big difference in that. And yes, it's more work. I think it produces a superior product, but that's my opinion. I don't know. I guess maybe it's my upbringing or something, where the old saying, "Pride goeth before a fall," kind of thing. That yes, it's gratifying. It's satisfying. I enjoy it when somebody comes back and says, "Oh, I got a bottle of that sweet, and that's really great." Or you get this, people come in and they say, "Oh, I bought a bottle of this a couple of years ago, and I've been nursing it, and now it's gone, and I had to come back and get some more." So of course, and you're the same way. You're what I've said to people, because I was a public speaker and those kind of things. Say, anytime you put yourself out in the world, so you're putting yourself out there on YouTube, yes, you're going to get criticism from somebody. Okay, that's part of it. Not everybody's going to like what you have to say. Not everybody's going to like what you do. That's fine. People come in and they say, "Well, I like this one better than that one." I said, "Okay, that's fine. That's normal. That's preference." I said, "They're different, and you're not everything's going to appeal to everyone." And there's you're going to experience it at some point. Somebody's going to disagree or something like that. And I said, okay. And I've always told people,
let me give you some advice. I said, but here's the deal. Advice is one way, but you have the option of whether you want to take it or leave it. I'll give it. You can decide. You can do nothing with it. You can take it, right? And I was like, I look for advice. I got advice from distillers before I started this, you know? And one good piece of advice from a distiller is he said you should make things that you like because there's got to be a million other people that like the same thing. That makes sense. Why would I distill something I didn't like? So you're not going to see certain things on the table ever, probably, right? And another distiller said, you know, I'm not worried about selling the first bottle because people will take a chance on something maybe once, but the second bottle is the key, or the third, right? To getting people to come back. It's and I'm sure you know this, but you know, you're still in your infancy of that, and it. Same thing here. We've been distilling for 8 years now, and all of a sudden we're an overnight success, right? Oh well, no, it took time and effort, and a lot of effort, and you just have to keep going. You just have to keep at it. I'd say, well, I'll give you the when I co-authored a book. I didn't do it because I thought I was going to make money. In fact, I used to joke with people after the book came out. I spent the better part of a year writing it, and that was while I was working. So I was doing it on the side, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I joke with people. They say, well, how's it doing? I said, well, I think I'm up to $1 an hour now. I think I'm getting paid $1 an hour. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I think I'm up to $2 an hour now, you know? And that book came out in 2005, and I still get royalty checks. Now it's not millions of dollars, but it's sold, last count was almost 400,000 copies, which is a lot.
That's a lot of books.
In a business book.
Yeah.
And it's translated into 11 plus languages, last count. But I did it because it was something I felt compelled to do to get this message out there, right? So you do it because it interests you, and because you enjoy it, and you keep doing that, and then pretty soon it's like, oh, I'm successful.
That's it. The reason I'm here, the reason I chose to spend an afternoon here in bourbon country is because it interests me, and I always think I make the videos. Well, what do I want to see?
Yeah.
What's the point of me making something, like you said, what's the point of making something that you don't want to make? And so I don't do, anyone watching, I don't really do reviews because there's a million other people who do reviews and they're happy. I want to talk to people who make it. I want to go out and try and find it.
You want the experience. Yeah.
It's everything else. I can drink it. Everybody's got an opinion. That's fine. And I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong, but that's why this, to me, as soon as I found out, I was like, this is the place we need to come, because like you said, there's big distilleries. We were at one today, fantastic Disneyland experience.
Yeah.
And they've got that script down to a fine art.
Yeah.
And it's great if you're new to it and you just want to have a wee pleasant day out, buy a bottle, go home. But for the makers, for the people that are really into it, interested, maybe the passionate one, something like this is what you want.
Yeah.
And also the buy-in of yourself and the team, and you all do this because this is what you want to do. This is not an easy life.
Yes. And, you know, I think the vast majority of our visitors appreciate that fact and share that with us and let us know that you know, if you read some of the reviews, they'll often say, go ahead and go to the big ones and see it because they're great and awesome, but then come here and see what it's like at this level. And so I think for the most part, our customer base, you know, the way I viewed it when I first started was, look, I'm a blue collar guy at heart. I've always done labor, even if it was hobby at home. But I was in the corporate world.
Yeah.
You know, I was a white collar guy at work, but my true nature is this. You come here, I'm dusty. I've been working just like everybody here, like Matthew there, who's all dusty because he's been handling grain, and so yeah, I think for the most part that represents our visitors, and that includes women, right? I'm not a blue collar guy, but just the folks who work, do work, is the core. And certainly we've got other people who appreciate our products and that, but whether it's the 20-somethings or the 40-somethings or the 60-somethings, we get a pretty good mix across the board there. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks, David. That was
My
excellent.
pleasure. What's the date today, Vicky?
22nd.
To see in a couple days, it'll be 2/24/24. It's a good thing you got you're gonna get another suitcase, huh?
Yeah, we've got baseball bats to get as well.